You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like and share our verified Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Also listen to us on Spreaker, CastBox, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts via iTunes, and Spotify, and like Stables Media on Facebook. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there. And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. I'm Taylor Phillips, along with Frank Vasner and special guest Roy Kessel, the CEO of the Sports Philanthropy Network. Roy Kessel, it's a great pleasure and honor to have you on the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, doing great. Thanks for having us here. We're excited to talk some Michigan sports and share the work we're doing.
All right. Let's kick things off with our opening statement. My opening statement, Tom Gores needs to sell the Pistons, and there's a different reason why. Frank, we'll start with your opening statement.
My opening statement is as follows. The Red Wings are actually going to name a captain this year, and all indications are it's going to be Dylan Larkin, and it should be Dylan Larkin, because I believe he's the face of the franchise, and he's also a local guy, and the people respect him, and plus he's matured enough too, so give him the C, Steve.
Yep. So before we get started, we want to remind everyone to download the all-new social sports app called VigIt, which is for sports fans that influence more and more people to love sports. Enter the referral code STABLES when you sign up. Available on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Download the VigIt app and sign up with the referral code STABLES. Follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips. Follow Frank Vasner on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Frank_Vasner. Ed Smith is out again this week due to moving priorities this week. At least he's feeling much better than last week. Follow him on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at EdSmith313. He will be back next week. I guarantee you that. So we got lots to talk about. We're going to talk about all teams again. But this time we're going to talk about the Pistons. From ESPN's John Barr as they lead the Timberwolves. Activist calls on NBA to pressure sale of Pistons owner Tom Gores' ownership of Prison Telecom Business. Here we go. An advocacy group took out a full-page advertisement in Sunday's New York Times calling on the NBA and 30 of its owners to force Detroit Pistons owner Tom Gores to sell his team because of his ownership of a prison telecom company. The advertisement refers readers to a website that says how Gores' ownership of Securus Technologies, which his Beverly Hills-based private equity firm Platinum Equity purchased in 2017, undermines the NBA's sincerity about its stance on social and racial justice issues. Securus helps to set the pricing for phone calls for jailed inmates in hundreds of counties nationwide, in some cases charging more than $14 for a 15-minute call. Bianca Tylek, founder and executive director of Worth Rises, the New York-based nonprofit that paid for Sunday's newspaper advertisement, said, quote, "At the end of the day, Tom Gores' business stands in complete tension with a notion that Black Lives Matter, and that's something he has to reckon with," unquote. Critics of Securus have long complained that the charges, which are legal and sanctioned in contracts with local governments, exploit inmates and their families who are often poor and minorities. The NBA embraced the Black Lives Matter movement this past season by painting the phrase on its courts inside the Orlando bubble and with players wearing social justice messages on the backs of their jerseys. Players also participated in an unprecedented game boycott after Jacob Blake was shot by police in August. In a statement released to ESPN Sunday, Barnhill, through a spokesperson, said, I didn't get the first name. My apologies. Quote, our commitment to the community and to social justice is visible every day, unquote, citing the company's work with numerous Detroit area programs and nonprofits. Securus is committed to shouldering, quote, the heavy lifting necessary to transform the company and the industry, unquote, he said. Tylik told ESPN she sent a demand letter to the NBA's league offices on December 10th, addressing her concerns about Gores to both Commissioner Adam Silver and the league's board of governors. A league executive responded Thursday, Tylik said, telling her the NBA appreciated her passion for reform, which we know is shared by Mr. Gores, and encouraged her to have a direct dialogue with Gores and Platinum Equity. Tylik and Platinum Equity both told ESPN that they were in contact with each other, but each blames the other for a breakdown in communication. This isn't the first time Tylik has targeted Gores. In October, Gores resigned from the board of Los Angeles County Museum of Art after Tylik co-signed a letter criticizing his ownership of Securus. Tylik is encouraging people to sign a petition, which she intends to take to the NBA in order to pressure the league to force a sale of the Pistons or to pressure Gores' company, Platinum Equity, to divest itself of Securus. Tylik said, quote, in his current position and how he's currently building his wealth and what he's doing to our communities, he shouldn't be allowed to own one of our favorite basketball teams, unquote. So we're going to go to Frank first. He can teach Roy the ropes. Then we'll go to Roy and let him have his thoughts. So, Frank, first off, we go with you. To recap, Tom Gores could be in a lot of trouble if he doesn't do something about this.
I would agree wholeheartedly. And, I mean, I know people try and compare this to the whole Donald Sterling mess with the LA Clippers about 6 years ago when they forced him to sell a team after he said some pretty racially insensitive things about, I'm not sure if it was his players or others, but I think in today's age and climate, it's not a good look when you're owning a company that charges an arm and a leg for phone calls to prison. I mean, those inmates' family members, they got a right to speak to their families. And I actually did speak with someone who sadly does have a family member who has served time and told me that it was not nice to have to pay a ton to just have a conversation with them. So my take is either Gores has got to sell the Pistons or he's got to cut ties with Securus, one or the other. Who knows what they'll do.
Platinum Equity?
We'll have to wait. Yeah, Platinum Equity is going to have to cut. They're going to have to cut ties with Securus, or he's going to have to sell the Pistons. He's not going to be able to keep both in this day and age.
Roy, what have you learned?
Well, I think one of the struggles is when somebody's got a business, right, we don't look in necessarily to all the businesses that owners of sports franchises have. I think that this case is obviously especially egregious, but I can't imagine if we dug through the portfolios of all of the owners and looked at all of their companies, there may be other companies that are equally unsavory. But going back to the key point, which is the charges for the phone calls, it's outrageous. I know quite a few people that have spent time locked up, and it's a great burden on them and their families to have to pay those charges. When you look at the cost of phone calls in today's world, right, you have a cell phone, there's basically no cost per call. And obviously there's a different system from the security and risk perspective that the prisons need to have in order to monitor the calls, record the calls, trace where things are going. I understand that. So some amount of charge I think is legitimate, but really that's a charge that should be borne by the system, not by the inmates. You're already restricting how many minutes the inmates can use the phone. It's not like they just have open access to the phone and can just make call after call after call, even if they could afford to, right? They've got a limited number of minutes per month. So that should be a cost of the system, not an incremental cost for those inmates.
Good point. Speaking of the Pistons, they lead the Minnesota Timberwolves 57-54. Pistons got off to a 12-2 start, 8-0 start to begin with. 30 seconds flat left in the second quarter. Mason Plumlee just got called for a foul. But other than that start, it's been close the whole time. It's probably going to stay close the entire game down the road as we approach halftime and then the third quarter and fourth quarter. So the Pistons, after that, they have their home opener Saturday at 7 against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are still struggling. Then the Pistons on Monday traveled to State Farm Arena to take on the Atlanta Hawks Monday at 7:30. They're home against the former champion Golden State Warriors Tuesday at 7. That's next week. And then home Friday and away Sunday, a week from this Friday, and then a week from Sunday, home and home set with the Boston Celtics. First they're home, then they're away. So another interesting schedule to look at, Frank.
Yeah, it is, and I'm really curious to see how much these young players like Killian Hayes and they're going to contribute early, or if they're going to just kind of be brought in slow. And also the signings too. I know you mentioned Mason Plumlee, but guys like Josh Jackson, who's trying to get his career back on track, like obviously playing in his home city because he played his high school ball at Detroit Consortium Academy back in the day. So hopefully things can get off to a smooth start. I know Pistons aren't expected to compete for a playoff spot in the East, but as long as the players can show some individual development, especially in the young guys, I think that things will be all right. I know they still need to get some pieces in and through the draft and keep building, but it's going to take time.
Let's shift on to hockey. The Red Wings, they'll have a 56-game regular season starting January 13th and be aligned with the Lightning and Panthers in the Central Division again. But I just had a recent epiphany because I was looking at the map again, the way they were aligned. Gary Bettman is trying to align the USA teams, the American NHL teams, into 3 vertical rows, no matter how far apart each team may seem from a distance, whether it's the states of Michigan and Florida with the Red Wings, Lightning, and Panthers. Florida, really, from what I can tell visually from the map of North America, is obviously almost right below the state of Michigan. I mean, I looked at it and I said, wow. I was like, wow, is it vertical? That gave me the thought right there that Gary Bettman was trying to divide the American NHL teams into 3 vertical geographic divisions. I know we got the North Division, which has the Calgary Flames, Edmonton Oilers, Montreal Canadiens, Ottawa Senators, Toronto Maple Leafs, Vancouver Canucks, and Winnipeg Jets. The East Division, Boston Bruins, Buffalo Sabres, New Jersey Devils, New York Islanders, New York Rangers, Philadelphia Flyers, Pittsburgh Penguins, and Washington Capitals. The Buffalo Sabres seem slightly further west than the Carolina Hurricanes, who are located in Raleigh. But again, like you pointed out several times, it's the rivalries. Central Division, Carolina Hurricanes, Chicago Blackhawks, Columbus Blue Jackets, Dallas Stars, Detroit Red Wings, Florida Panthers, Nashville Predators, and the Tampa Bay Lightning, which, again, seems fair. My knee-jerk reaction, well, I thought I didn't agree with it, but then again, I looked at the map. Florida and Michigan were almost perfectly vertically aligned. I know Florida's...
I honestly never thought about it that way, Taylor, but that's a very good observation on your part.
Yes. Then the West Division, Anaheim Ducks, Arizona Coyotes, Colorado Avalanche, Los Angeles Kings, Minnesota Wild, San Jose Sharks, and St. Louis Blues and Vegas Golden Knights. All that being said, the Red Wings nonetheless will still have a rough year because Jeff Blashill is still their head coach. But I want to see what the new guys can bring to the table. They got rid of Eriksson. They got rid of Abdelkader. They got rid of Trevor Daley. They got rid of Masson Bowie. And they added new guys like Vladislav Nemestikov, Bobby Ryan, Troy Stetcher, John Merrill, and Thomas Greiss, 5 key free agents on the Red Wings roster. So all that being said, Frank, I want you to analyze the Red Wings starting January 14th, actually. The season starts January 13th, but the Red Wings are starting January 14th, except they're at home against the Carolina Hurricanes in a quarantine division matchup. Frank, lay the hammer on Jeff Blashill, but analyze them fairly, please.
First and foremost, I know there's going to be people that say, why has Blashill not been fired? I mean, in all fairness, the Red Wings were only a one-line team last year, and he really had no other options other than Jonathan Bernier to turn to in net, because obviously Jimmy Howard couldn't stop anybody from scoring.
That's right. They got rid of Howard, too. Jimmy Howard, yeah.
Yes. So the way I see it is new guys like Bobby Ryan, John Merrill, Vladislav Nemestikov, they're going to help the team get better. They're going to provide some depth. I mean, granted, this division that they're in, that's been restructured, is absolutely loaded for bear. I mean, Carolina, who they play first, they were a playoff team last year, and obviously they've got the Blackhawks, who I know had there been a full season, probably wouldn't have made the playoffs, but they were in the qualifying round, and they did knock off the Edmonton Oilers, who are managed by former disgraced Red Wings GM Ken Holland. But all that aside, and plus Nashville, Dallas, and the others, that's going to be some tough matchups. But you know what? If you want to keep getting better, you got to show what you can do against really solid teams. And there's going to be there's plenty of opportunities for them to do so. So my thing is, if they end up looking just as bad as last year, which I don't think they can get any worse because I think last year was rock bottom, then probably mid-season, Steve Eisman is going to tell Blashill, see you later. Even though he is in the final year of his current deal, I can't really imagine them bringing him back unless there's dramatic improvement from players and they win a lot more games than they did. I think they'll win a few more, but I just can't see them getting out of last place in that division because it's just so tough.
All right. Roy, your thoughts on the Red Wings?
Well, I'm just happy as a guy in Chicago and a Blackhawks fan. I'm happy to have the Red Wings and the Hawks back in the same division and get that rivalry going again. I think some of the other realignments did a disservice to the rivalries. It's going to be interesting to see this year which teams stay healthy through this COVID situation because for last season you had the bubble. The teams were pretty well isolated. The NHL got through everything pretty easily. I know it's going to be a big challenge right now. I was on a conference call with Gary Bettman a couple weeks ago and talking about why they created that Canadian division just based on the restrictions of going across the border and everything. Obviously, I think the league loses a lot by not being able to have that interaction. You've got some of the classic teams there north of the border and not having those rivalries. I think it hurts. The Red Wings, as you said, brought in some free agents. It's going to be interesting to see. They haven't been at the level that we've come to expect of the Red Wings over the years in terms of dominating, going back to even when one of my favorite players, Chris Chelios, was there, even towards the tail end of their career, and the Wings were just dominant, always beat up on our Hawks, so, for many years. So it's going to be interesting to see how the COVID toll takes its effect, I think, on these teams and see who's got that depth, because you're really going to need it at a different level than you've had it for other years.
Yeah. So the Red Wings, we'll see what happens down the road. We'll keep an eye on them as always. Again, January 14th, home against the Carolina Hurricanes at Little Caesars Arena. Now, the Lions. They will interview former Atlanta Falcons general manager Thomas Dimitroff and former New England Patriots and Kansas City Chiefs executive Scott Pioli for the general manager position. They've also have shown interest in Rick Smith. They will interview him as well. So the Lions, their defense, same old story, gave up 46 points. They lose to the Tennessee Titans 46-25. The Lions started Stafford anyway and let him play through a torn rib cartilage. He wasn't actually that shabby. He was 22 of 32 through 22 of 32 for 252 yards and a touchdown. But then Chase Daniel got in some reps, took over the rest of the game under center and had a nice touchdown drive in garbage time, which I saw. He proved in that drive that he can scramble, unlike Stafford, throw the football, and make good plays. 5 of 6 for 55 yards and a score. He also handed the ball to DeAndre Swift in that drive that I saw aforementioned. Swift got a touchdown on that to cap off that drive. So all that being said, with their putrid defense still not doing anything, the Lions definitely deserve to get scorched by Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and the rest of the Titans offense and then get eliminated from playoff contention officially. Thank God that's over with. So, Frank, after that, they fired special teams coordinator Braden Combs after 14 games because he called it a fake punt without consulting the rest of their coaching staff. Sources say he went rogue on it, and that fake punt play call failed to get the Lions a first down. But just barely, though, the way I saw it. Looked like from live replay, my knee-jerk reaction was I thought that they got a first down, but it was called the other way. But anyway, that had no bearing on the game. Anyway, their defense, horrible as always, Frank. We'll start with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same song, different verse with the defense. I mean, as for Braden Combs, this goes to show that you're on a coaching staff. You can't go rogue at all. You got to stay in with them with a game plan. You may not like it, but, Darrell Bevel is currently your boss right now. You better do what he says if you want to still have a job and get paid. So that's why they had to cut ties with them. And of course, I think we'll get into this. I know they're supposed to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this Saturday, but Taylor, I believe they got some COVID issues. Is that right?
Yes, they closed their facilities due to 2 positive COVID tests, and now the Lions coaching staff says that they are out due to contact tracing after those 2 positive tests of COVID-19.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I hope this isn't a situation that's as bad as it was with the Baltimore Ravens about a month ago when they were supposed to play the Steelers on Thanksgiving and couldn't, and had to wait till the following Wednesday to do so. I mean, hopefully those who did get infected do recover quickly, and those who are out due to contact tracing can continue to test negative, so that way you don't have to go through the whole ringer of having to get the game postponed and rescheduled, because then that's just going to be a bigger mess on their hands, and they don't really need any of that right now. And as for the GM candidates they've interviewed, why are they talking to Scott Pioli? The guy was highly sought after 12 years ago, and I know people are going to say, well, he went to Kansas City and he got them turned around. Yeah, he got fired 4 years after that because they didn't do much better. So I would say don't touch Scott Pioli with a 10-foot pole. Thomas Dimitroff, I'm kind of on the fence about him. I don't like that.
50-50?
Yeah, kind of a mixed bag with the Falcons. I mean, Rick Smith, I would probably prefer all those 3, to be quite honest with you, because he wasn't technically fired from Houston. He left on his own because his wife was sick and he wanted to care for her. I mean, granted, but his drafting has kind of yielded mixed results. I know he got Deshaun Watson in 2017, but the rest of it's kind of been hit and miss. So
right. He signed 3 good players before he left, and then Bill O'Brien took over.
Oh I forgot about who he brought in free agency. So I mean, all those 3, obviously, I'd go with Rick Smith. I'd probably be a little satisfied with him. Is he perfect? No, but I'd take him over Dimitroff and Pioli 7 out of 7 days of the week, twice on Saturday.
Yeah. By the way, Bill O'Brien is a hack, as your name tree would say. Roy? Follow up best you can.
It's interesting when you look at the former New England coaches and front office executives. When they're away from Bill Belichick, you really haven't seen a lot of success. You've seen a lot of people on that coaching tree get opportunities and get head coaching jobs. But when they've left, you really haven't seen I think Mike Vrabel probably is the one who's done the best when he left that staff. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the Lions. You bring up those 3 names. I know those are the names that people are hearing. I don't know. I think there's probably some younger people coming up that have been, number 2 in their front office under their GMs that might even be better choices. I think that I agree with Frank in terms of bringing in Rick from Houston. I think that team had potentially the best base and the best core going back when you look at what they had before Bill O'Brien sort of tore things apart and blew everything up. But I'm interested to see who the coaching candidates are. Obviously, Darrell Bevell's there right now. I'm not sure if he's going to get real consideration for the job or not. They certainly seem like they've played hard for him the last few weeks, been competitive, but not able to finish those games.
Uh-huh. Blake Griffin starts the 3rd quarter with a drive to the rack and a hook and a score. 59-56 Pistons with 11:25 counting in the 3rd quarter. Timberwolves with it. They answer back. Number 5, I believe. That's can't see the name on the back of his jersey, but it's 59-58. Anyway, good points on the Lions. But in case the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game at Ford Field does happen Saturday at 1 on NFL Network, we're going to predict this game with a Viget predicted score. Frank, we'll start with you. Analyze first, and then do the Viget predicted score.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have kind of been a hit-and-miss team. I know they have Tom Brady playing quarterback, and he may not be Tom Brady from 10 years ago or from his best years in New England, but he's still Tom Brady, and he can still go out there and ball. Plus, he's still got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski to throw it around to. And Tampa's defense has kind of been a bit of a surprise this year. I know there's been a couple times where they've gotten gutted by the New Orleans Saints, but then again, who hasn't been? So I really don't see the Lions being able to win this game because they're not going to be able to get after Brady. They're not going to be able to cover Evans and Godwin and Gronk, even though Gronk is seemingly a shell of himself. So my Viget predicted score in this one, I'll go Tampa Bay 35, Lions 20.
Roy, having analysis and a Viget predicted score?
Well, I think the Lions have been giving up a lot of points, so I think that the 35 is probably right in that range. I might even bump that up a little bit, so I'm going to go 38-31 because I know the Lions have also been scoring quite a bit, and Tampa Bay's defense has had quite a few games where they've given up points. So I like it to be a high-scoring game. I'd go with the over.
Yeah, I would have to agree here. I first picked 39-23 Tampa Bay, but I'm going to change it this time, change one half of it. Tampa Bay 39 and Detroit 30. So that's Lions. Now to college football. Michigan State and Michigan will both end their seasons. They're going to both opt out of bowl eligibility. The Spartans had their game against the Maryland Terrapins canceled. Spartans finished their season 2-5. Michigan had their game against Iowa canceled. They opted out, finished their season in 2-4. And first off, before we get to Michigan, Michigan State has lost one of their quarterbacks, Rocky Lombardi, entering the transfer portal. So, Rocky Lombardi, horrible performance overall this season except for one game, but I think Rocky Lombardi has had enough. He actually left. They didn't cut him. He actually left. Frank, your thoughts on that?
Here's what I'll say as a Michigan State fan. I know I was less than thrilled with Rocky as the quarterback many a time, but I mean he did end up leading them to a win over Michigan and a win over Northwestern, who was ranked as well. So I have to say thank you for that. Thank you for a win over our biggest rival. Best of luck to you, and hopefully he does land somewhere. Where that is, I really don't know. And as for opting out, I think it was really Mel Tucker just coming out and say, yeah, I wanted to play, but these guys have been on campus since June, and they haven't been able to go see their families, so I want to make sure I give them that opportunity. So I think it was more so that. Does it stink that they missed out on possibly getting a bowl game and getting that extra practice in and stuff? Yeah, but you know what? Some things are just more important than football, and family is one of them, so players got to go home, see their families, spend Christmas with their families. Good for them. Hopefully they stay safe there, and they come back in the spring ready for spring practice.
All right. Pistons lead the Minnesota Timberwolves 71-61 with under 8 minutes to go. Killian Hayes, I believe, just nailed a 3-bomb. Yeah, it's a 10-point game. Killian Hayes, I'm rewinding here. Roy Kessel, your thoughts on Rocky Lombardi transferring as Hayes hit a 3 from the right corner?
I think you're going to see a lot more of that in college football. If players, I think you're almost at a point where it's open recruitment every year. If somebody's a backup and they don't think they're going to start, there's a lot of interest in movement. It's going to be interesting this year, especially because nobody lost any eligibility from a player side this year. So it was kind of free games. So you could go and try out players and see how they're doing and not cost them a year of eligibility. Michigan State was really a curious team this year because their typical trademark of being physical and tough was something that I didn't see as much as you normally did, and yet they had what I think is probably one of the biggest upsets in college football this year when they beat Northwestern, who had been taking care of people pretty well in that game. I know turned around on Northwestern's little end-around fake, and the guy dropped the ball coming around the corner. But Michigan State really played a physical game there and hit it head-to-head with Northwestern. It's going to be interesting to see. I think Mel Tucker has the right attitude. He's coached in the NFL. He likes that tough physical approach. It'll be interesting to see how well he recruits because that's going to really dictate the skill level. In terms of opting out of the bowl, I don't love that for any of these teams. If you're a college football player, you want to play football. You're Big Ten this year. You only had 6 games to start with. You lost some due to COVID. You're really not getting the 15 developmental practices that you would normally have in college football, because if you just had a game last weekend, your bowl game is next week. And so you probably only can get in a handful of practices before your bowl game. But I don't know any kids in college that would rather sit at home quarantined with family than be at a bowl game with their buddies. So I think it's a mistake. I think most kids would rather be playing football.
Yeah, except for Michigan and Michigan State. Not only did Michigan, for example, come down with COVID cases, they finished 2-4. They don't deserve bowl eligibility, and neither do the Spartans, who are finishing 2-5. Like I mentioned before, I mentioned those records before. All that being said, I want the Wolverines and Spartans to keep playing football, but by all means necessary, they don't have a choice but to sit out the rest of the season. So there's that. And then we got college basketball. The Spartans men's basketball team, who are ranked 4th, lost badly at the Northwestern Wildcats, 79-65. Boo-booey for Northwestern, 30 points. Aaron Henry for MSU, just 11 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists. Frank, you pointed this out many times before. Michigan State's defense needs to really improve, but their offense, they obviously fell flat against the Wildcats. Ugh. And now they're ranked 17th.
Yeah, I mean, I've pointed out that this team has really struggled defensively, and me being kind of a disciple of a defensive-minded basketball coach who I'm still on staff with at a high school level, I just can't help but wonder how many times Tom Izzo put the team through the old shell drill, which I won't really explain that to you guys because that's going to take me a while to do. But it basically emphasizes working on defense and the fundamentals, cutting seams, checking out, contesting shots, even taking the charge as well. This team really seems to struggle with contesting shots, and that is just a really huge bugaboo for me. I'm hoping that they can at least spend time working on it. And I know people point at, oh, boo-boo, he always seems to perform well against Michigan State. Well, doesn't matter. You got to be able to slow guys like that down. And offensively, I'm not really sure if they were just flat, if this was just a blip on the radar, or if there's more trouble that they got to work with because Joey Hauser was ice cold, Rocket Watts was cold. The only guy who was really hitting shots was Josh Langford, and he fouled out in the game. And so I think there's work to be done. Spartans will play on Christmas Day against Wisconsin. I will be
12:30 on Fox.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, offensively, their players got to get more wide open instead of just settling for contested shots, like you pointed out. So that's my best key.
And on defense, please contest shots and get a hand in your opponent's face. I know there might be times where you may get your hand in somebody's face and they hit a shot. Sometimes that happens. You just shake the man's hand and say, nice shot, and keep playing. But you ain't going to hit a shot every single time you contest.
Right. So, got to stay with your men defensively. Can't leave them wide open, especially not from three-point range. Yikes. Yeah, we got plenty of time here. Roy Kessel, your thoughts?
Well, I think one of Tom Izzo's trademarks is teams getting better and improving over the season. He always tries to challenge them early in the year. Obviously, this year's schedule's a little bit different. I expect Michigan State to continue to improve. I wouldn't have liked to be a player at those practices the last few days after that Northwestern loss. And as a Badger fan, I'm not sure we're going to like seeing what happens on Christmas Day because they're going to come out pretty hungry. Wisconsin has had some of its own struggles offensively. Last night against Nebraska, they had one basket in the first 10 minutes. And, they still came out alive in the second half and pulled it off. But I think you're going to see a pretty intense defensive battle on Christmas Day because both of those teams can go through significant periods struggling on offense. What's going to be really interesting to me is the Big Ten tournament this year because you have so many teams. You got 7 teams ranked in the top 25, another 3 or 4 receiving votes. And I hope that they're able to have the Big Ten tournament because to put 10, 12 teams in the same gym at the United Center and see what kind of competition there's going to be, I think that's going to be an intense environment.
Yeah, I want to go back to college football for a little bit. For the Michigan Wolverines, I almost forgot to mention that they finally fired their defensive coordinator, Don Brown. And like Ed Smith mentioned many times, Don Brown has been a sacrificial lamb for Jim Harbaugh. So Jim Harbaugh looks like he might stay. If he does, he'll go without Don Brown finally. Let's see how he does with a different defensive coordinator, Frank.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely surprised that he told Don Brown, see you later. I mean, granted, it probably should have happened a couple of years earlier after giving up a 60-burger to Ohio State. But, I mean, I've had people say to me, well, I think
that was 2018.
Yeah, 2018.
Yeah. And then 2019, over 50.
Yeah, and I've had people say, well, I think they're based it too much off of the performances against Ohio State because they still had good defense. Well, it wasn't just a bad game against Ohio State. Wisconsin, bad game multiple times this year, and
they got blown out that game last year.
Yeah, and even
Harbaugh took responsibility too.
Yeah, and even times when they played Penn State, they've looked rough as well. You could kind of see that at times in 2017. You could see things are starting to go wrong. Now, granted, I know that injuries to Aiden Hutchinson, Quiddy kind of played a role. They weren't able to get pressure on the QB, but at the end of the day, it comes down to coaching, and this defense wasn't really getting any better. After 2016, you could see things were starting to go away. I mean, losing Mo Hurst to the NFL definitely hurt them a few years ago, and they were just never able to get defensive linemen in and get them ready to kind of fill the void left. So, as for who Harbaugh gets to be his new defensive coordinator, the name I keep hearing is Derek Mason, who was recently fired from Vanderbilt. He was with Harbaugh when he was at Stanford, but then again, if I'm looking to be a defensive coordinator somewhere, I'm not so sure I want to hitch my wagon to Harbaugh because we keep hearing, oh, there might be an extension on the table. When's he going to sign it? This has been going on and on and on and on. It's been kick the can down the road, and I'm sure if Ed was here, he'd say the same thing. But I wonder, if Harbaugh wants to be there so bad, why hasn't he signed? If Michigan wants him that bad, why hasn't he signed? The more this goes by, the worse it's going to look, and I'm starting to wonder if next year, if he stays there, if things are just going to go completely to hell in a handbasket. Because I've said this on here, and I'm going to say it again. Michigan has got to change their culture. They can't be pointing to Bo Schembechler every time and trying to do things his way. Do you think Alabama still does things Bear Bryant's way? No. When Saban came along, they didn't really cut Bear Bryant out of their history. They just said, you know what, we can't do things this guy's way anymore. Ohio State's done it the same deal too. They don't do things Woody Hayes' way, and I'm sure Michigan, they've got to stop doing things Bo Schembechler's way. It can't just be Jim Harbaugh telling stories about how when Bo came up to him and said, Jimmy, let's go beat those damn Buckeyes. They're living in the past too much.
Great points. Some great points there, Frank. I think the one I liked is changing that culture, because when Alabama tried to sustain Bear Bryant's culture, right, they ended up with notable names like Mike Shula, and they had Mike Price that didn't even make it to getting to a season before he got relieved of his duties, and they hit some pretty poor times for quite a number of years before they got Nick Saban back there. But in terms of Jim Harbaugh, it's really curious that extension hasn't been announced, because I had from a fairly reliable source close to that program that had been agreed to about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we all anticipated that would be announced in time for signing day. And the fact that wasn't announced before signing day is really curious, and I don't understand how you're going to attract, as Frank said, any quality defensive coordinator to come there on essentially a 1-year deal if Harbaugh isn't extended before you get that person in place. You're not going to hitch your to that wagon. You know that the likelihood is if Jim wins, that's great. You might be able to stick around. You might get a renewal, but you're really going to a 1-year contract. So unless that person's coming with a big buyout, I don't see it. And what was interesting to me with Don Brown is the numbers on his defenses have been pretty good up until this year, just the statistical numbers and rankings in the top 10. But I was at that game last year in Madison when Michigan played Wisconsin, and obviously watched closely this year. There was no comparison. Last year, Wisconsin took advantage of some big plays, but the defense for Michigan wasn't getting blown off the ball on every play. Wisconsin wasn't just gouging them for a dozen yards at a crack. They made a few big plays. When you watch that game this year, that defense reminded me of the Rich Rodriguez defenses that were just soft and didn't want to hit and didn't want to tackle anybody. And so it was very different perspective to what I've normally seen in a Michigan defense. Even when they get beat, they're getting beat on a big play. They're not just getting gashed up the middle.
Plus, their offense kept fumbling the football, and it kept costing them, too, under Rich Rodriguez.
Never a good formula to turn it over.
No way. Turnovers can always kill you. Yeah, or most of the time. Anyway, the Michigan Wolverines men's basketball team is now up to 20th. They actually have not played since last week, but they're back in action on Christmas Day, on Christmas night, technically, Friday at 6 on BTN at the Nebraska Cornhuskers, 4-3. Frank, how tough of a task could that be for the Maize and Blue under Juwan Howard?
I mean, Nebraska doesn't look like a team that necessarily strikes fear into you at first glance, but this is Big Ten play, and we know how tough the Big Ten conference is in basketball. Truly, at any given night, anybody can beat anybody. So, I think they'll take care of business, but we'll see how it goes.
Roy?
Yeah. Well, having watched Nebraska last night, they couldn't hit anything, despite playing Wisconsin that put up 3 points in the first 10 minutes. Nebraska only had like a 10-3 lead, so they weren't exactly lighting it up either, and didn't do much in the second half. So I think that unless Nebraska just happens to get a hot night and shoot lights out, I don't see how they're going to keep up with Michigan's scoring.
What a fast break I just saw right there. Pistons getting 2 points off of that one. 83-75, they lead the Minnesota Timberwolves. 1:58 left to go in the third quarter. Blake Griffin just got called for a foul, but a nice bounce pass, I believe, by Derrick Rose to, I believe, Josh Jackson otherwise. Yeah, that was number 20 for the Pistons. I think it was Josh Jackson, wasn't it? But anyway, the Tigers, shifting to baseball, picked up 2 men. Signed catcher Dustin Garneau to a minor league contract with an invite to spring training. Garneau was a backup catcher for the Houston Astros, only hit 165, only more than 30 at bats, not too many reps. And then they signed former Miami Marlins right-handed starting pitcher Jose Urena to a 1-year, $3.25 million contract. First, we're going to grade Dustin Garneau and then Josh Urena in the What's Your Grade segment. Frank, what's your grade on Dustin Garneau? Then we'll pass it over to Roy.
Garneau, I'm going to have to say, I'm going to have to give this a C+. I think this is nothing more than a depth signing because we all know the Tigers really needed depth at catcher, so I think he just brought in to give some depth, solidify the position. He's obviously probably going to end up starting in Toledo and may get called upon in the event of injury. But that's really all it is.
Right. I think from as far as I'm concerned, the Tigers, if they were to call him up alongside Grayson Griner, they would have like 2 backup catchers, the way I see it on paper.
Yeah,
Roy, what's your grade?
Called up in the event of injury.
Mm-hmm. So does 2 backup catchers, is that like 1 half and half equal 1? Does that mean that you don't have
we see things on paper. Both Grayson Griner and Dustin Garneau had very low batting averages as catcher. But Dustin Garneau can throw opposing runners out.
Well, I think that defensive element always helps, but I'm going to agree with Frank. I don't think this is a move that shifts the needle in anything meaningful way for the Tigers in terms of what they're going to be able to do.
All right. So both Frank and Roy graded a C, and I'll graded a C as well. And now Jose Urena, a 1-year, $3.25 million contract, as I mentioned before, Frank. Now you grade him, Jose Urena. What's your grade on him?
I'm going to give this one a B+ because I think this is one of the this is one of those potential low-risk, high-reward deals. I mean, Urena's I'm pretty sure he had some decent starts when he was in Miami with the Marlins, even though that team was a dumpster fire. So, I mean, they're kind of bringing him in, help to solidify the starting rotation. I mean, it's not going to make the Tigers significantly better, but, it never hurts to bring in somebody on a 1-year deal for who's had some quality starts. Maybe he needs a change of scenery. So maybe he'll end up doing some good things for him. And if he doesn't, what do they have to lose? Nothing. So I'm giving this a B+.
All right. Roy, what's your grade on Urena?
Yeah, maybe a little bit better than the C we had before. So, I'll just keep it with a flat B. I don't know if it's enough to really make a big impact.
All right. I'll go with a mid-range B just to be fair enough. Try to range it the best I can, like I always do. Now, to close it out, the 5-question segment. Question number 1. Could we see the possibility of Tom Gores selling the Pistons? Remember, this is not going to be based on team's performance, but the story from ESPN's John Barr. Frank, your answer to question number 1 with analysis, please.
Well, I think it's really going to depend on how much heat he gets from the other owners they're probably, if they give him an ultimatum to either have Platinum Equity cut ties with this company that has telephone calls to prisons and charges an arm and a leg. It's either your team or the company. You're not keeping both. So I think it's just a matter of whether the owners come forward with that.
Roy.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, that the best option is one that they're not going to pursue. I agree with Frank that it's going to be one or the other, and it's going to be a business analysis of whether he decides it's more important for me to keep the Pistons or it's more important for me to make whatever money I'm making from these phone calls. The best solution would be to really see the league and the community put the hammer down and use this as an opportunity to change that business model on those phone calls and get those costs reduced. This is a time where there's leverage there, and instead of charging, again, the numbers I've seen, anywhere from 20 cents to $1 a minute, which is just egregious numbers, right? Get that thing down to either free calls or minimal charges. And I think this would be a great opportunity to put that pressure.
Absolutely. Question number 2. If Gores sells the Pistons, whom should or could he sell it to? Frank, I don't think we've come up with any options yet, but try to come up with a wild guess, if you may.
Oh, that's a tough one, to be quite honest with you. I haven't really thought about a new potential owner for the Pistons. I know when you've mentioned the Lions selling, you've mentioned Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon. So, I mean, I don't know if Bezos would be interested in owning a basketball team. I would say that could be a possibility. I mean, I know back when, after Bill Davidson passed away, the Ilitch family was rumored to be a potential buyer for the Pistons. I don't think they're going to end up being a buyer this time around.
I mean, how could they own 3 teams? Seriously.
Yeah, exactly. They already own 3 teams, and Chris Ilitch doesn't like to spend money, as we all know.
Then they would have way too much on their hands.
Yeah. So, unless they do end up selling the Tigers or the Red Wings, and they say, you know what, we just want to own an NBA team, the Ilitch family's not going to be in. So, I mean, honestly, Jeff Bezos is the only guy I can think of that would be interested in being a buyer. I mean, I can't really think of any other Detroit businessmen that would want to own the team. I know everyone would say, well, what about Dan Gilbert? He owns the Cleveland Cavaliers, so unless he's saying, you know what, I'm going home to Detroit, sell the Cavs, and buy the Pistons, I don't see that happening at all.
Yeah, I don't think Dan Gilbert's a good owner either.
Yeah, I don't think that Dan Gilbert's not going to be an option. I think it would be interesting in a lot of these teams to see ownership groups comprised of some of the former players from the Pistons or maybe even from the Fab Five. See if we can get Jalen Rose and Chris Webber to take over the team, or throw in Lambeer and see what kind of ownership group you can get out of that.
Oh, it's interesting you bring that up. I think I would like to see somebody like Chris Webber or Jalen Rose, or maybe even Grant Hill or Isaiah Thomas possibly buy a small stake as a minority owner.
Yeah. Question number 3. This may be an easy one, but will the Red Wings fire head coach Jeff Blashill after their quarantine season? I'd like to think so. Frank, we'll start with you.
I'll stand by what I said earlier tonight. Unless there is significant improvement and dramatic improvement in the standings, I cannot see him being brought back at all unless they're significantly better than last year. So I'm going to say he ain't coming back.
Right, because if there is no significant improvement, that's got to be on the coaching. Roy?
I'm not sure he's going to make it through the whole season. So do I get to say no, he won't get fired after the season because he's going to get fired during the season?
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Maybe even
I'd like
before
to
the
see
trade
that
deadline.
happen.
Maybe even before the trade deadline. Think about that.
Well, if they
thinking,
get off
Roy.
to a really bad start, I could see a scenario where Steve Eiserman pulls the plug on him and gives Dan Bilesma the interim head coach.
Without even saying a word. So, question number 4, based on the Lions. Should the Lions start Chase Daniel after being eliminated from playoff contention? Frank, we'll start with you again.
I would definitely consider it, given the fact that Matt Stafford has been beat up and injured. However, one thing I will say about Stafford, you can say a lot about him, how he's played, but if there's one thing you can't say that he's soft, because he was quoted as saying, if I'm able to play, I'm going to play, because I'm the quarterback of this team. So, I mean, granted, I'll give him props for that, but I think it's probably best that he just shuts it down for the last 2 games. Got really nothing to play for. Losing is all that's really going to help you get a better draft pick. So go ahead, start Chase Daniel, see what he can do, and if he does well enough, then maybe you can possibly get something for him.
Speaking of the Pistons, number 20 is Josh Jackson. He just threw down a jam on a lead feed from number 45 of Detroit.
Oh, from Sekou?
Roy. Yes, Sekou Doumbouya. Yes, Sekou Doumbouya. Thank you very much, Frank. Yes. Roy.
I think that you have to start Chase Daniel here. You need to know what you have. You know what Matt Stafford is. I think that era is coming to an end. You're going to have a new coach. The GM's got to look at things. I'm not sure anybody believes Chase Daniel is the answer, long-term answer as a quarterback. You have to make a decision on whether you need to go out and get an immediate starter right now through free agency or the draft, or whether you're going to look at Chase Daniel potentially as a stopgap for a year while you groom somebody else to take over. I'm not sure, but I don't see any benefit to starting Matt Stafford. There's no reason to get him more injured or have more problems for the long term.
Yep. Question number 5. This is going to be based on after this season. How much longer could the Lions possibly hang on to Matthew Stafford? Frank, we'll start with you one last time.
I mean, if it was up to me, I'd move him this offseason. But I think, depending on where their draft position is, if they do end up getting another quarterback, obviously they're not going to get Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. But let's say they end up with somebody like Kyle Trask or Mac Jones.
Or Zach Smith.
Yes.
Or Zach Smith from BYU.
Yes. Yeah. I honestly could see a scenario where they say, you know what, we'll keep Stafford around for this year just to groom the new guy, take him under his wing and mentor him, and then when the time comes, we'll trade him somewhere else. So I think probably at most 1 more year, but I'd say look at doing it this offseason and trading him if you have to, especially to a team who's going to need a quarterback. And I know that the Pittsburgh Steelers are probably going to need one because Ben Roethlisberger is falling apart, and you don't want Stafford to look like that.
Yeah, I think not to go off topic. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that Frank's right. I think the most you're going to get is 1 more year. I'm not sure that, to me, that Justin Fields is going to be the second best quarterback out of this draft. If you look at some of the struggles that he had at Ohio State in a few of these games, especially the Big Ten championship game, missing one of his receivers. He's had elite receivers. He looked terrible in the Indiana game. He didn't look great.
Shocking.
And so if you look at Trask, or you look at, from BYU as well, you look at some of the other people
Zach
out there,
Smith. Yep.
It's going to be interesting to see how they perform at the Combine and in the Senior Bowl and things like that. I think the challenge with Stafford is I'm not sure how much value he has even as trade bait right now. I think there's very few teams that are going to give up much because his clock is ticking quickly. And even if he goes somewhere like Pittsburgh or a good landing spot, I'm not sure he's got more than another 2 years in him. So I'm not sure what you're going to get back for him. Is it worth a 4th or 5th round pick instead of keeping him there to groom whoever you decide to take in the first round?
All right. So that is our 5-question segment, and that is everything we've covered for this episode. And by the way, Ed wouldn't say too much about Don Brown and the Michigan Wolverines football team. Again, like I mentioned before, they let him go. He would just agree with Frank. Just simple as that. So before we go, we want to remind everyone to download the all-new social sports app called VigIt, which influences more and more people to love sports. Enter the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the letter B in the middle when you sign up. Available on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Download the VigIt app and sign up with a referral code STABLES. Gentlemen, excellent job as always. That concludes another fine episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. We'll be back next week for Frank Vazner and special guest host Lloyd Kessel. And on behalf of Ed Smith and Darren Weiss, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Power to the people. Hit them with a hind. We rest our case. Stay safe. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll be back next week before the New Year rings in.
Merry Christmas, y'all.
Thank you. Have a happy holidays.
Thanks, you too.
The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there.